One of the things that makes a walk cycle very difficult is the complex interaction between the various parts of the body as the character moves, as well as the challenge of capturing the subtle weight shifts from step to step. I love talking about walk cycles, so if you don't mind, I'm going to geek out with you here and try to get you to understand the mechanics of a walk cycle on a deeper level. Here we go. Let's take a look at some of the completed walks. We're going to start with some real solid ones, and we'll talk about what's making those ones work. And then we'll start looking at some ones that need a little more work, some that need some finessing, and we're going to focus on some sort of common problems that come up with walks and some issues that you guys are probably running into as you're working on these. So let's dive right in, and let's look at this first one here. All right, and it's got a nice attitude to it. It's got kind of a really nice sort of swagger. He's got a really nice sense of weight and balance. He feels very real and very alive. Very, very nice. Really good overlap and follow through. Really, really nicely done walk there. The next one here. That's looking really nice. Okay. All right, a little more exaggerated overlap and follow through here. A little different kind of vibe than the other walk, but still really, really nice. The torso movement could maybe be smoothed out a little bit. And one thing that I didn't do in the lesson, which I just didn't need to in that particular case, was add any curvature to the motion path of the torso. But if your torso is moving as much as this one is, and if you're getting some, potentially jumpy movement there, you can try adding a little bit of curvature and just make those torso movements like little ovals, little circles, little smooth paths, and you don't want to go overboard. Don't add a whole lot of extra moving around, but just add some soft curvature to them. You'll smooth out some of that torso movement. But overall, really, really nice example there. So both of these are looking really good. Very, very strong, nicely timed walks. Now, these ones are also looking really good, but could use a little bit of work. So let's look at a couple of these here. With this one, it's the speed of the arms that is giving us a little bit of trouble. And if you look at this front arm very closely, you'll see that it's kind of moving very slowly towards the back, and then it kind of speeds up as it comes forward. And it's not terrible, but it just feels a little awkward and a little out of balance. So what we'd want to do there is make sure that the distance that we're traveling from the passing position forward is real similar to the distance from the passing position backward. And in this case, you can see the back is barely moving. It's barely going back, but then it comes way forward. So now this gets a little bit into taste and style a little bit here, but you just want to be aware that that is causing a little bit of a speed imbalance on that arm. So it's going fast and then slow, fast and slow, fast and slow. And again, if that is appropriate for your character, if it's what you're trying to do, that's great, but be aware of it at least so that you can fix it if you want the swing to be a little more fluid, have a little more of a continuous flow to it. So a really important thing to look at there. And the back arm is working a little bit better because the distance that it's traveling is a little more equal from the center forward. Although it's got a little bit of a speed up forward there too, you might want to look at the interpolation of the keyframes in a situation like that to You might have an easy ease or something right in the middle that's causing that to snap a little bit forward. You want to be careful of the easy eases because remember they do actually drop the velocity down to 0, and the continuous velocity or the auto Bezier, the little circle, that doesn't drop down to 0. It just connects the velocity outgoing to the velocity, or the incoming velocity to the outgoing velocity, and smooths that out, but it doesn't drop it to 0, which an easy ease does. So you want to be careful and make sure that you don't have that in there. But I think this might be similar thing where it's just not moving back very far. It's moving back a little farther than the front one, and it's moving forward quite a bit more. So you just want to be aware of those little timing imbalances and make adjustments in your spacing if the timing is feeling a little bit off. But the overall timing of your walk is good, but the timing of one part, look at the spacing, and in this case in the front arm it's really about the spacing from the passing back and the passing forward. So let's look at the next one here. All right, nice. This is another really nice one, very, very close to being right on here. This one just has a small issue, which is that the knees are a little bit jumpy. They're wobbling a little bit. The front one's wobbling a little bit coming forward and snapping a little bit towards the back. So I would just look at those and just adjust your motion graph a little bit and see if you could smooth those knees out just a little, but it's not a lot. This one also, you might also want to look at adding some Beziers to the cog on the torso there and smoothing that out just a little bit. That might help as well. But overall, a really nice walk. Really just needs a little bit of work. Oh, and there is this arm, once again, kind of sticks a little bit as it comes back. That seems to be a little bit common. It's not as bad as the other one, but again, you might want to think about swinging it back just a titch or changing the passing position just a little bit there to make that a little bit more even. But a really nice example there, just small tweaks really to pull that one together. Okay, next up, we have one here. This is now this one could use a little bit of work here and there. It's a little bit herky-jerky. Needs to be smoothed out. The cog especially needs to be smoothed out. And you might want to look at adding some Beziers there, but also looking at your poses a little bit. It's just a little bit jerky, especially coming forward there. And so the walk isn't perfect, but one of the things I like about this walk is that it's got a nice kind of a calmness to it, and it's less exaggerated than some of the other walks, particularly with the arms. And you can see that the arms still have a really nice flow and a really nice overlap and follow through, but they're not as exaggerated. And that was one thing that seemed to come up, was that because I did kind of a really exaggerated overlap and follow through with Dolly, that doesn't translate as well with Ollie. It makes him, it doesn't quite work with his big, kind of beefy torso and stuff. And this sort of more subtle approach shows that you can still get the same fluid feeling without that big extreme motion, which I think is really good. But the thing that's really nice about this walk is it still has a lot of life and a lot of energy to it. It really just needs a little smoothing, and it has all that life and energy while still being relatively subtle. The steps aren't very wide, the swings aren't very swingy, but it still has a lot of life and energy. There's a lot of nice fluid motion in the torso as well as those arms. So it's a really good example of how you can be subtle but still have a lot of life and energy in your motion. Okay, next one here. Okay, this is another one that needs some work. It's again a little herky-jerky. I would particularly look at those down positions are really jerky. I would maybe look at the interpolation there. Looks like you might have diamonds. You might want to add a continuous velocity or auto Bezier to those and make that a little bit less extreme. But wow, the personality on this walk is wonderful. It's got a great sense of personality. He's really a guy on the go. He's got something to do. He's on his way. He's very determined. He's almost stomping. It's really fun. It's really got so much personality to it. But there is a little bit of an odd limp happening, and I don't know if you can sort of feel that, but there's an unevenness in the amount of height there is on the down positions. And just like we really try to get a lot of symmetry into these walks, we try to get the feet to kind of pass equidistant from front to back, and we kind of want the torso movements to repeat on each step. And so we build in a lot of symmetry, and one of the things we want to be careful of is the symmetry of the height as we go from an up position on one step to the up position on the other step, and the down positions on both steps as well. So in this case we have this very extreme down right here, and it's great. It's really fun. It's really big, strong pose there. But then when we come down here, we don't go down nearly as far. So what we get is this, again, this kind of limp, boom, boom, boom. And it's would be totally appropriate if we were trying to communicate a limp, but if we're going for that kind of plain vanilla just walk, you don't want that kind of unevenness. You want it to be fairly even. And if you wanted this to be a limp, you'd want to go way farther. It's not far enough to be a limp, but it's too far to be kind of a vanilla walk. So you just want to look at the heights. You can even bring some guides down, and since the feet and the legs are uneven lengths, you're never going to necessarily get it perfectly, but you want to get just kind of a similar amount of downness from one pose to the other, and a similar amount of upness, if that makes any sense. So other than that, and then working on smoothing this out a little bit, and again, you might want to try adding some Bezier to the cog, to the torso. Other than that, this is a really fun walk and moving in a really, really good direction. All right, this next one. Now, this one here needs a little more work. It has a few more issues. And one of the first things I want you to notice is that the feet are sliding. You can see that. The feet are sliding around. And this is a real problem because it really belays the reality of our scene. We lose our kind of real sense of weight, and gravity kind of goes right out the window when we have the feet sliding around like that. So you really want to make sure that you carefully adjust your timing and make sure the spacing on your feet is equidistant. And in this case here, both feet seem to be sliding a little bit. So I'm not sure exactly where the issue is, whether the distance between the steps is the wrong distance, or whether the speed of the overall pan is wrong. You also want to make sure that you remove any interpolation on the keyframes from when the foot comes down to where it goes all the way back. You want to make sure that's non-interpolated in any way. So you don't want an auto Bezier or an easy ease, definitely not an easy ease. So any of those things could be causing this foot sliding along the ground, and you want to make sure and get that fixed. The arms are also swinging in kind of an odd way, again, where they feel like they're going really, really slow as they go back, and then they kind of snap up forward. And again, some of this is a little bit taste and style, but this just doesn't seem very natural, and the arm seems in general to be swinging much higher than it needs to for this kind of easy breezy walk, because he's not really taking such huge steps, and his body isn't moving all that much. So it sort of seems like the arm swing is sort of out of proportion with the overall walk. So I would just take those front positions of the arms and just bring those way down and just let those be a lot more subtle, like that example we were looking at earlier with the more subtle arm swings. Just pull that down a little bit. So a few issues here, and the foot sliding is the biggest one. Okay, next up. All right. Now this one has some more serious knee wobble, and the one we were looking at earlier, there was just a little bit of knee wobble, but this one, it's quite a bit more serious. It's popping in the front, and the back one is wobbling towards the back. And we talked quite a bit about getting rid of that knee wobble there towards the back as that foot comes back, and that's about adjusting the motion graph on the heel roll as that foot comes up. Then the other thing that you can do to fix these front knee wobbles is to adjust the motion graph on the position value of your foot controller as it comes forward. And it's a very similar problem where it's going bent and then straight and then bent again, and that's giving us that little wobbly snap. So what you want to do is you want to grab the Bezier handle for the position value of the keyframe where the foot is already down here. You want to grab that and you want to pull a bunch of influence so you actually stretch the foot out earlier. So what happens instead is the foot just goes bent to straight, and it goes straight earlier. So it stays straight for a couple of frames. You don't need many more, but just a few frames. And then it bends again as the weight comes down. That'll get rid of that little wobble and make that little front knee thing much, much smoother. Okay. This one also has a great personality. I would argue the back arm, the swinging of the back arm feels a little bit strange, and the speed of the front one, once again, could be adjusted a little bit. So again, it's not moving so fast coming forward and so slow going back. The back arm is actually sort of fun, but it's snapping just a little bit. I would just look at smoothing that out just a little bit. All right, fun. All right, this one here. Okay, this one has a few issues going on. It's mostly that it's very jerky, and it's particularly jerky in the cog. So you want to look again at your interpolation of the keyframes there, and you also might want to look at adding some Bezier handles to those motion paths on the cog to smooth that out a little bit. And again, we're also getting this kind of big swing on the arms, even though the movement is actually quite small. These steps are really tiny. So with such tiny steps, I would expect his arms to be swinging even less, just to kind of match the same intensity and momentum that he's moving. So this one needs quite a bit of adjustment, and a lot of it in the cog. I would also maybe recommend getting the feet out in front a little more. If you notice that at no point do the feet ever really come in front. He never really puts that foot out to catch the weight. He's kind of almost like he's purposefully taking little baby steps or something. And again, some of this, you can get into the performance of the character, and maybe you want that kind of a feeling from him. Maybe he's a kind of tentative, hesitant sort of character. But in that case, again, I would exaggerate it even more, and it's not quite at the point of communicating any strong emotion. It just feels a little stiff and a little kind of stilted. I would also bend the torso more. The torso is bending a little bit, but you could definitely add more torso movement to loosen this up a little bit. That would help quite a bit. All right, next we have some runs, and even though the run was a bonus lesson, I thought it would be fun to look at some successful ones here for those of you that decided to take this on and try doing a run. So here's a fun one here. Great. Nice and sprightly and fast, but it's also real clean and smooth, very easy to follow the motion. Nice sense of timing and forward momentum there. That's a really, really nice, solid, clean run. Great. And really nice sense of weight. We get a really nice sense of weight on all these poses. Really good. And fun adding the drop shadow too. That definitely enhances the vibe there. Very nice. And then we have this one too. Okay. So cool. What a really fun run there. I love the exaggerated overlap and follow through. I love overlap and follow through. That's really fun. I actually like the panning speed here, where he's, because he's actually moving a little too fast, he's actually gaining on the camera. It's a really kind of fun feeling as well. It gives it a really nice vibe there. A lot of fun. Now, I would quibble a little bit with the extremity of the deformations in the torso. The torso is getting really, really twisted out of whack in some of these poses, and it's just not attractive. And you could get this exact same feeling, I completely swear, you can get exactly the same feeling without distorting the torso so much. And in many cases here, it's the hip roll that's the problem. It's excessive hip roll usage. So be very careful with that hip roll. Generally, I would say don't use it unless you really know what you're doing. And definitely don't use it to the point that you're really distorting the rig to that degree. Just want the character to seem a little more solid. And what happens is, you can see how bad that's bending there. What happens as we watch this is that his torso loses a sense of any kind of solidity and just becomes kind of rubbery, mushy gunk. And a little bit of rubbery in animation is fun and good, but too much starts to feel kind of gross. And I would argue that this is getting to that level. So I would definitely pull back on these a little bit and tone down the deformations in the torso. But that said, wonderful timing, really great, super exaggerated poses and overlap and follow through. A lot of fun. So much personality there. Really, really nice. All right, last but certainly not least, more fun run here. All right, another kind of more crisp, snappy kind of a run, but also really fun. Great energy to this one as well. Could maybe use just a little more torso movement, just to flex it up a little bit, just make it a little more flexible, but overall really nice, and has a nice timing, nice sense of weight to it. Let's open a couple projects and look at a couple of specific issues here. Let's start, let's see, with this one here. Let's do a little RAM preview and take a look at this. Let me see, this one is, I gotta remind myself which one I'm looking at here. Okay, this is, oh yeah, this is the one with a little bit of a jerk in the cog. Let's have a look at this one. And you guys can see that little jerkiness there. Well, I tracked it down pretty well to the cog. And you can see that what's happening is right in here, whoops. Oops, I'm using my, it's funny, I was using different key commands having been in frame all morning. Okay, so as this comes forward, there's this big shift forward in the torso, right there. See that? And there's a big change in direction here too. Watch as the torso and the cog move back and then suddenly jump forward in this kind of really strong angle. See that there? Bonk, right? That's where we're getting that little jerk from. It's just a little bit kicking forward on each of those steps, a little too much. And in a way, it gives the walk kind of a nice sense of forward thrust, but it's a little too much, so it's ending up reading as a pop, partly because it's just too far forward. So let's take a look here at some things we could do. So I'm going to select the cog here. Now, one thing that would actually probably improve this a lot is if you just added some curvature to the motion path of this part of the movement. That alone would probably fix this quite a bit. So I'm going to do that on both of these here. I'm pretty sure this will help a lot. Whoops. I think it should be that way. Is it that one? All right. Getting myself confused there. Yeah, it should be that one. All right, why isn't it letting me get that Bezier? All right, this is that trick of having two things right on top of one another. Sometimes this can be a real pain. Try to get that to go. There we go. All right. Okay, so that's going to help. And in fact, let's kind of take a look and see what that did. We could even curve it all the way through here if we wanted. Let's just see if that did some good, and then I'll show you one other little thing that I think will help. Already, that's like a million times better. Much, much smoother. So we've been paying a lot of attention to the motion paths in the feet, and when we do the ball throw and other things, we'll pay a lot of attention to the arms. And in a lot of cases, you don't really have to do all that much with the cog. But if you have a movement that's that dramatic, where you have a big shift in direction, just that smoothing that out a little bit will do a lot. And if you are really a smoothness fanatic, round all these out. So he's basically making a little oval as he goes through this movement. The other thing you could do, though, is tone down that forward movement. I don't think that would hurt at all. So let's look at that as well here, where the cog is kind of jerking forward there. And I'm going to move him a little bit past that point and zoom in again on that cog motion path. So I don't think it would hurt very much to bring this back a little and just tone this down. So I'm going to select one of these. And then the other one on the other step is going to be right there. I can tell just by, once I know where one is, I can easily find where its opposite is on the other end. And then now I'm just going to scooch all of that back. Oops. I got to be on that keyframe to do that. Okay, let's scooch that guy back. And just make it not quite so dramatic. We can leave our little curve in there. All right, let's see how that one looks. Now I think we should really have no issues now. There we go, nice and smooth. And as we see this, it's a really nice walk. It's really smooth. I would say there's just maybe a little bit of. Well, actually, no. That walk's looking pretty great. Oh, I know what it is. I was going to say it feels a little stiff. It's the arms. The arms haven't been offset yet. Offsetting the arms will be kind of the final step, and this walk will be looking really nice. So you can see it's a really small issue there. Really not anything huge. Just some minor tweaks to pull that one together. Okay, let's open another one here. Let's see this one. All right, and this one I wanted to look at because this one had quite a severe foot sliding issue. The feet were really sliding quite a bit along the ground, and let's have a look at why. Let's RAM preview this here. Now when you look at the walk here in the in the pre-comp, everything looks great. But as soon as we isolate one of these feet, we can see what the problem is. So I'm going to zoom in here. And you can see that the problem is that the distance out forward is not as far as the distance out back. So what this basically means is that you're moving back at a slower pace and then suddenly moving back at a faster pace. So you're shifting speed right here. Now when we set up the walk keys, I talked a lot about how you want an equidistant forward and equidistant back, so when your feet travel along the ground, they're traveling at a constant rate. This allows you to set a constant panning speed for your background and lock those feet in really nicely. But I wanted to show you guys this and talk about it a little bit, because there are going to be times where you will not have that luxury. Not every walk will look right or feel right, particularly if you're doing something more exotic. You're not always going to have the right look by having the foot come out the same distance that it goes back. And in those cases, what you actually have to do is you actually have to have one panning speed from here to here, and then you have to have another panning speed from here to here, and then when the next foot takes over, you change to that speed, back to this speed, back to that speed, and you literally have to change the panning speed every half step. Now that sounds horrible, but it's not that bad when you remember that you still have a cycle. So once you establish the speed of the first half of the step and you establish the speed of your second half of your step, then you can use copying and pasting and in order to get that to work. But it's way more of a pain in the neck than being able to get your foot to drag along the ground in a continuous, steady pace. So what I like to say is, if you don't have to do this, in other words, if there isn't anything special or unique about the walk wherein you are required to have a change in speed, or you're required to have, say, a different speed from one foot to the other, because that's the other possibility, is, for example, in a limp where you have one foot just going back a little ways and then you have the other foot going back a long ways. That's the same situation. You're going to have one panning speed for the first foot and a second panning speed for the other foot. But again, if you don't have to do those things, make your feet travel the same distance forward and the same distance backward. Remember that our passing position should essentially be at zero, position zero, in your X value. So you want to go 500 forward and 500 back, or 7 forward and 7 back, or whatever that is, and get those feet traveling at a steady, even pace. That is by far the easiest way to work. So pretty much work that way always, unless you have a compelling character or story-driven reason not to, because then you're going to add a bunch of work to your life. Now, the function for getting the feet to lock on the ground, you're going to do, it's exactly the same. It's just you're going to have to set more keyframes, and you're going to have to again shift that timing as it moves from either the first half of the step to the last, or from one foot to the other. So again, just avoid this. Avoid it at all costs. It's a much better way to work. Okay, so let's look at another issue with this one, which is the arm swinging. Although maybe I will, yes, okay. This one is a great example. This is a more dramatic example of what we talked about before, where the arm is changing speed because it is traveling such a greater distance forward. You feel how it speeds up every time it comes forward, and how it slows down every time it goes back. So we're getting this kind of uneven speed on the arms. Now again, if you want that, or if it's, you know, something about the character or whatever, yay, that's awesome. But for a kind of more vanilla, kind of even rolling, flowing gait, you kind of want to even that out a little bit, so there isn't so much the sense of him kind of speeding up with that arm each step forward. So I think we can fix this pretty easily without doing a whole lot. What we really just need to do is look at how far it's swinging out here as opposed to how far it's swinging back. So here's our middle position. So from here to here it swings out like almost 90 degrees, and from here to here it's maybe 20, 30 degrees, something like that. So if I was to just, for example, and this is, by the way, just one way to fix this. We could also make the arm swinging out the back go out higher. But if I just take the amount of swing down on the upper IK of this arm just a little bit, so it's a little closer to the amount swinging out the back, and then we make sure, of course, to copy and paste this to the front and back keyframes, you'll see we already probably will have improved things quite a bit. Okay, see that there? How right away we're getting much less of that sense of that arm hugely hurrying up. Now it's still doing it a little bit because of that lower IK, so I would probably also tone that down just a little bit. So let's grab that keyframe and copy and paste that here. And then this should pretty much do it. And it's a subtle difference. But you'll see now that the arms are swinging at a little more of an even pace. It's not quite doing that hurry up really quick to get in front and then slow down like crazy as it drags back. And it's a much more even, steady walk there. Okay. Now I would do the same thing with the back arm. You can see the back arm is doing something really similar there. So I'd probably do about the same thing there. So some real improvements there. Okay. Let's move on. One more here. Now this one is one that quite a few of you ran into, and unfortunately because let's see, it's this one here. Unfortunately, because it sort of happened to not occur when I did my tutorial, and in a secret sense I kind of had wished it had, because I could have showed you guys how to fix it. But that is the front knee wobble. Okay. And maybe wobble is the wrong word, maybe pop, front knee pop. So let's take a look here. We've got it going pretty bad on these knees. Now this walk has some other issues. The arm swing in back needs some work. And there's a few other small things, but I want to just focus on the knee wobble for now. So for one thing, I want to point out that there's a knee wobble in the back of the back knee there a little bit. I'm going to ignore that because we did cover how to fix that. So if you want to fix that back wobble, watch my video. I go through that in some detail. But you can see as the legs come forward that we're getting these kind of awkward pops in the knees as each foot comes down. And again, I know a few of you ran into this. Now, this is quite frankly a little bit trickier issue to solve. The issue here, as we discussed earlier, we pointed this out earlier, is that basically the foot goes straight as it comes into its passing, and then it bends right away again as the weight is taken, and as it comes around, it's bent, it's bent, it's bent, and then it goes straight, bent. Okay, you can see it really clearly right there. Bent all the way through, bent, 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 and then just straight, bent. Basically one frame where the leg is straight. So that's what's causing that little pop right there. As I said, this is pretty common, and to a certain degree, you have to accept a small amount of that knee popping in some situations because it is the nature of the beast to a certain degree. You do have to stretch your leg out and to take the weight, and then when the weight comes down, the knee is going to bend. But we can minimize this once again with the motion graph editor. And it's similar to what we did to fix the back wobble, in that what we're going to do is adjust the ease into this position, but what we're going to be looking at instead is the position value of the foot controller coming forward. So let's look at this here, and what's happening is we're staying bent all the way through, and it only goes straight right here. If, like with the heel, if we can get it to go straight a little earlier, it'll smooth this out quite a bit. Again, this is the kind of thing where there's only so far we can go. Like I would have to keep you guys late to really solve this, but I can show you guys how to get at least part of the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come a frame or two even before the foot comes out, and I'm going to grab this guy, and the first thing I'm going to do, so this is the position keyframe coming into this position where the contact is. First thing I'm going to do is add an easy ease, and that's going to help us some. And by the way, you also notice I only did easy ease in. Do not do a standard easy ease, because remember we want smooth interpolation coming out as it drags along the ground here. But in easy ease in, that gets us part of the way there, but it's not quite going to do it. Now I'm going to RAM preview. Please just watch just the front foot. And I don't know if you can see, but it's already a little better. It's already not quite so violently popping as it was, but we can improve it even just a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to again go back a couple frames from the end, and I'm going to grab that guy, and we're going to go to the motion graph, and again I'm in the speed editor here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull some influence from this key, and we're just going to stretch that foot out, maybe not all the way to straight, but really close. And now it goes pretty much straight a couple of frames before. And let's see if we've essentially solved that. Yeah, much better. Okay, see how that it's not giving us that crazy pop. Now it still pops a little. Again, as that weight comes down, it's got to pop a little bit. But it's much, much better. And look at it in comparison with the back foot. See that? See how the back foot is still really kind of jumping around, whereas this front one looks much, much smoother. So let's go ahead and fix that back one really quick. And so we can kind of see these knees as they should be. So with the back foot, we're going to come to the end here as it comes in. And again, we're going to take that key and we're going to start by adding an easy ease in. And then we'll go back a couple of keyframes. And then grab our motion graph, and once again we'll pull this out till it's almost straight. Oops, maybe something like that. Okay, I think that should do it. Let's see. Much better. All right, now you see what's happening now is it's maybe popping out just a little bit. Maybe I made this a touch too extreme. So you might want to come in and maybe we'll pull this back just a little bit. Let's see if that makes that a little bit less dramatic. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, but you can see massive improvement, right? Now, if you wanted even more smoothness here, you could perhaps start to play with easing the position of the cog coming down on that weight. And if you were to play around with that a little bit, you could also make the bend of the knee happen a little bit less quickly. So we could take this farther. We could go a little bit farther here if we needed to. I think honestly all you have to do here with this back arm, and I'm going to try to see if this will do it, is just bend it back quite a bit more and then bend it down a little bit at the elbow. And let's see if this comes close. I don't really have time here to maybe 100% fix this, but my guess is that this is going to be close. Yeah. Now, to me, that arm feels a lot better than the way it felt just a minute ago. So perhaps maybe even pushing that a little bit farther. So it's almost like you're duplicating the pose in the front, but in the back with the elbow bent upward and the arm down. You just need to have it kind of match the intensity on the other side. So this is nice to see here because we just did a couple very small tweaks, and I think you guys will agree that we've made some nice improvements there to the walk. So that's looking a lot better. One question I get asked about this exercise is how do you match the feet to the floor if you don't have convenient lines drawn on the floor as we do here in the animation lab? Those lines are kind of convenient for matching up the feet, which is true. But this is actually a really easy thing to do if the background design you're using doesn't have lines or similar markings on the ground. all you got to do if you don't have lines on the ground is pre-comp your background. Now my background is not pre-comped in this case, but all I would have to do is pre-comp the floor, which I guess would be right here. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll pre-comp that. We'll leave all attributes in here. And all you'd have to do, let's pretend we have no lines here, is you could just go ahead and draw yourself some markers. Either make them out of shapes or make them out of strokes or lines or whatever you want. Just add them in there. Go back to the render comp and then use those to line them up. And then just delete them or turn them off when you're done. So easy. You just basically add lines where there are no lines and then just turn them off when you're done. So pre-comping totally solves that problem easily. That's it for episode 3. You know, learning to do a basic walk cycle is just the beginning. There are an infinite number of ways a character can walk, and at this point, you can start playing around with your walks, trying to get different looks and different feels. Up next, we'll be tackling a throw animation, which is more challenging than you might think. Good luck, and I'll see you next week.